Hi everyone, for those who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn and I run the services at MedComsNetworking.com and the associated websites for the global MedComms community, by which I mean people who work in and around medical education, medical communications and medical publishing. You'll find me specifically provide lots of resources at FirstMedCommsJob.com for anyone who wants to learn more about the business, including videos like this one. Today, I'm joined on a panel by representatives from several companies to talk about what it's like working in MedComms, how to get an entry-level job, what to expect if you join the business, and the career opportunities that lie ahead. Can I just start by asking each of you just to quickly introduce yourselves? Thanks. And Matt, I'm going to ask you first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Matt Evans. I'm agency lead for 7.4, which is one of the full services agencies within AMICULUM.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. And Katie, can I ask you to introduce yourself similarly?
Hi, I'm Katie Johnson. I'm part of the talent acquisition team for the Ashfield Healthcare Communications group.
Thank you very much. And Claire?
Hi, I'm Clare Wadsworth and I'm a Global Business Unit Head with Envision Pharma Group.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Sutherland and I'm Group Professional Development Director at Fishawack Health.
Fantastic. Elena?
Hi, I'm Business Unit Director for Helios Medical Communications and I'm the lead for the Witney office in West Oxfordshire. Excellent.
And Paul?
Hi there, I'm Paul Farrow, Group Communications Director from Oxford PharmaGenesis.
Brilliant, thanks. So great to have you all on board. Thanks very much for joining us. The intention is to have half an hour or so talking, answering questions and so on. We've got a great audience and quite a number of people watching us. We're going to, as I say, to those in the audience, please send your questions in. We'll try and cover as much ground as we can. Can we just start? I mean, you've already seen the questions that are coming in, quite a few around the current COVID problem and so on. Let's just face up to that straight away. We're talking in May 2020. A lot of us have been in lockdown for a few weeks. Let's just address that a little bit, can we? I guess, and maybe each of you just say a few words, and let's go backwards this time. Let's just try and alter the order a little bit. You've all been sent home. MedComms is a business where a lot of people are used to working remotely, but just a few words from each of you. Paul, can I start with you? What's it been like? What's happening? And how has it disrupted things? How's it working?
Yeah, I think we're as an industry we're probably lucky that we've embraced some of the technology that allows people to work from home several years ago. So certainly from an Oxford PharmaGenesis perspective, there was a little bit of disruption at 5 p.m. when we got the call from Boris, but people have settled in, working well at home. So yeah, we're able to do the majority of what we do for our clients from here. I think for me the biggest frustration is missing being in the office around friends and colleagues. I think that's the biggest challenge is looking forward to getting back to that.
Fantastic. And there's going to be a degree of overlap here because I think you're all going to say similar things, but can we go around just the group? Eleanor, same from your point of view?
Yeah.
Anyway?
Yeah, a bit like Oxford PharmaGenesis, we'd already invested in Teams before lockdown, so actually it was pretty easy for us to switch to working remotely, and certainly for the Witney office, we were already remote from the AP office anyway, so it's been remarkably straightforward. And for me, I'm also interested in how, for example, the NHS has adapted so quickly as well. So for our clients and that extended audience, patients and HCPs, I think it's an incredible turnaround.
Okay, and Diane, from Fishawack's point of view?
Yeah, I mean, much the same as the other companies. We're used to remote working where, we've got a lot of people who are home based anyway, so are set up, and many of us who work from home on a regular basis. And for those who didn't have the sort of good equipment or the kind of equipment they want to use long term at home, we allowed them to take things back from the office. So the office must look dreadful at the moment, but that has been really helpful. Technically we're very well set up to work from home. Mentally, it's a bit more of an issue for a lot of people, and so what we've been doing is keeping a really close eye on things, doing surveys sort of regularly to check in on people on how they're doing and offering that extra sort of support. And we're just about to start a sort of mental health and wellbeing program of webinars for people to help them cope with the issues that came up during the survey. So that's probably the toughest thing. It's that people are good, they're doing really well, they're they're saying, I'm doing this now and it's great and it's working well, but I'm not sure how much longer we can keep this level up for. So it's kind of keeping an eye on that and making sure that, because the work has not gone down at all. The work is still probably even more than it was before. So we're very, very busy and recruiting as we were.
Okay, thanks. And I'm going to keep going with this. I know we're duplicating a little bit, but I think there's an important message coming through here that MedComms is still functioning. So, Anne Claire, you're next.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think Envision is, I think, has always had a lot of people working remotely and globally. So IT-wise and everything, that wasn't really an issue, but it is the same, that just there's a lot of people who are fully in the office who are now working from home fully. So culturally, and the way we all engage and we participate in team, activities, that has changed. So we've got the regular Friday night Envision Arms pub, where everyone grabs a beer and, chats on a Friday at the end of the week. And, every team is supporting each other. So it's, completely, I agree with Diane in terms of the longer we get into it, the tougher it can be. But I think that's everybody in society, full stop. But there's also a lot of opportunity to do things differently. I mentioned that, it has changed hugely. It is a massive revolution. And what we're seeing is clients being much more open to the kind of things they wouldn't have, listened to before. So we've always pushed virtual and online. We've got a big, push on environmental impact. So the amount of travel that you do, suddenly we don't have that. So we can do some really interesting things. So clients are much more open. The work is still coming, agreed. And this, we're very fortunate to be in a robust, industry and a sector of it in terms of the agency. Clients need us, they need the work we do to communicate. So it's a really interesting time. But I think that we've, probably with all the agencies, that this is a people-led business. We sell time. So our people are our greatest asset. So making sure that, they're well looked after and supported is absolutely critical.
Fantastic. Okay, Katie, and you're on the HR side as opposed to the other side that the other people represent. So, how do you see it working at Ashfield, and particularly from an HR point of view?
Without kind of copying what everyone else has said, but prior to lockdown, the business was already set up with that dynamic ability to work from home and remotely. And I think that the main challenge has been that team environment where people are very much used to being with each other or being around the office. And it's a case of we've rolled out more well-being initiatives, things like that, to ensure that everyone is fine working from home. But yeah, the work's still coming through where some events or congresses might have been postponed. That work will come back when we can go. And in the interim, it's looking at what virtual and digital options we can deliver in the meantime. So kind of expecting there will still be work and a backlog of things that they'll want to crack on with when we can as well. So yeah, it's very busy.
Excellent. Okay, and who's last on the list going back? It's Matt. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, similarly, I mean, we had a little bit of a heads up because the Shanghai office was obviously impacted early on in the start of the year. So we had a little bit of insight into how they cope with that and strategies you could share across the business for staying connected. And as everyone said, we were already interconnected with Teams and laptops, and remote working and home working was done. And as Katie was saying, some of the medical congresses obviously got cancelled, which forms a big part of MedComms, either through events at them or obviously abstracts and posters and presentations. But most of them have switched to some other format, whether it's virtual or online, and took quite a while to decide to do that. So hence we're all pretty busy now because a lot of them are trying to keep similar dates, but obviously want to switch to some other format. And we're continuing as usual, but I think, as everyone else has sort of said, pharma will continue. Therefore, MedComms will need to continue. What format that takes and the channels and things, how they might evolve in response to this and post this situation. Maybe a different picture, but the industry, I hope, is going to stay the same in terms of impact. Whether we continue to fly around the world quite so much or get everyone together face to face quite so much. But you do lose something, I think. The virtual space is very good, but people still also like that human contact. So hopefully that will come back in some form if it can.
Excellent. Okay. And I just think that was worth making that point, frankly, at the moment in May 2020, that MedComms business is still very busy, frankly, and that all of you really, I mean, you wouldn't be here if you weren't, you hadn't got your eyes open for new people. I know you're at different stages, and some of you are more aggressively recruiting than others, and so on. But yeah, this is still a thriving business, and obviously it might be changing rules a little bit, but we're going forwards, not backwards, sort of thing. So that's important. Specifically, and a whole bunch of questions coming in about remote working, and let's just start more specifically with remote onboarding, as it were, taking on new people. I mean, I would say if we'd been doing this, and indeed we have got webinars on FirstMedCommsJob.com from a few weeks ago, effectively saying if you're going to join a company, you're not going to find it difficult to start remotely as an entry level. They want you in the offices, basically, for lots of very good reasons, to be part of the team, to learn from everything that's going on around you, and so on. But some of you must be getting quite a lot of experience of onboarding remotely at the moment. Can we just have a couple of you maybe talking to that one? And Katie, I'm going to take you as you're nodding, but your Allegro program is regularly going every 3 months or something, so you've seen quite a shift there, but you are keeping on going, aren't you? And what sort of challenges have you faced onboarding remotely?
Well, in terms of the time it takes, where usually you might just ask a question to whoever you're sat next to, that kind of the question is a bit disjointed in a sense, but we're just increasing the amount of check-ins and Zoom catch-ups and things like that. But yeah, interestingly, we're currently running an Allegro at the moment that's fully remote for the whole duration, which has thrown up challenges, but everyone's in that same environment where we're all learning and adapting at the same time. So people are more forgiving over what we can get done, and the goal will be, when we're all back in the offices, that we will still want our entry-level people in and present. But yeah, it's kind of how we're coping in the meantime.
So has anyone got anything to add to that? So is anyone taking any or seeing any any differences in terms of approach or so on? I mean, with your training programs and so on. In fact, I'm going to just call Diane. Diane, with your training program, I know there's a lot of activity there. That's all pretty much online anyway. So again, are you just finding that the guys who are onboarding at an entry level stage are just tapping into that and it's sort of working okay?
Yeah, it is so far, because we've got our bridge system, which is our online training. So very, it's quite normal for someone when they start at first to have a whole list of induction trainings and sort of basic skill training that's done online anyway. We do have a couple of sort of classroom style ones that we do as well, but we're working with the trainers to deliver that remotely. It's not as nice. You miss the social aspect a little bit. But, as Katie was saying as well, it's all about making sure that, we are having social things anyway with the team. So making sure that the new people are invited along and they're all coming along and taking part. So yeah, the training's all kind of going on as before, but in an online way, which again, we've got the setup for that. So we're just slotting it in. So
to answer some of the questions, there's a couple of specific questions along these lines to look forward a little bit, and let's be aware that we're talking in May 2020, and someone might be watching this video in 6 months' time. We're not quite sure what's going to be happening, but as we're sitting here at the moment, does anybody see this as being a complete game changer? Will you stop worrying about where anybody is as an entry level? Will you be taking? There's a couple of questions. Can I work entry level completely remotely from somewhere far away? Sort of thing. Is it going to change? Is it going to fundamentally change that approach, or not? Or don't you know yet? Sorry, and Claire. Sorry.
Yeah, I would just say that I think that we've got, a unique opportunity to do something we never would have done. So we, like the others, would have people in the office and supported. So we have a few folks who were due to start anyway, so are being taken through that process. So our sort of take on that is really to see how this works. Are we able to support them? So, this is we'll have evidence to support whatever the strategy is as we go forward. And, we very often have an associate medical writer, for example, based in an office, and their manager may not be with them. They may be working with a team in a different office, but they have that support around them when they're just sat there not knowing what to do, going, what do I do? How do I approach this? There's at least somebody to call on to just sit with them for, and help them, because it is that community, and that will be the same in all, approaches, I'm sure. So, but I think we need to see, because it's a tough role, any entry level to get into MedComms, because you've got to learn the industry as well as learning what we do, you know, the specific roles. So I think we need to see how it works for the next, you know, sort of period of months before we roll any or change anything. But it could be a game changer, because we're seeing it with clients. It's a game changer with the way that whole teams generally are working. It will be, you know, a much greater acceptance than there has been. So yeah.
Okay, maybe a game changer. Anyone got anything to add to that, or what I'd like to move on to, if everyone's happy? But again, an important message there. I think, you know, we're in the middle of change, and but there's a lot of adaptation going on. But this, you know, remote working in all senses is going to impact, and there's no reason why that shouldn't impact an entry level. But don't get away from the fact that being part of the group is really important, and it's the chats over coffee, and it's just hearing stuff going on around you. That's difficult to replicate online as you're starting out. So there's very good reasons why it would have been said you have to be in the office. So okay, we'll see how it goes. We've got, and I'm smiling slightly, sorry, these questions, these are all valid questions. There are no bad questions, but for those of us who've done these sorts of meetings before, these questions, some of these questions come up each time. So and it's no bad thing to go through it again. So there's quite a few questions about qualifications to come in. They seem to be mostly focused on the writing side. So let's just deal with that for a moment. Do I need a PhD? It looks like I need a PhD. People don't get back to me if I haven't got a PhD. We've got a span of companies in front of me. Can we just very quickly run through? And in fact, why don't we just literally run through everybody? But I'm hoping that you're going to bring out the differences that I think between you, and then I may make a comment at the end, as I usually do. But let's just randomly go around. Diana, Fishawack, you know, have they got to have a PhD, really?
No, you don't have to have a PhD. The thing that you absolutely have to have is a life science degree of some sort. And we, up until very recently, we haven't tended to take on people who are fresh graduates, but we're already doing that, starting to take them, and they have a slightly more intense training. We were going to have a graduate academy this year, but that's kind of gone on hold for just now. But it's definitely a more intense training for graduates, but the opportunity is still there. I mean, as long as they show in CVs that they've got an interest, you know, the interest in writing comes out and their ability to communicate comes out in their application, then absolutely. We've had some real high flyers who've come in straight from graduation.
Okay, cool. Again, I'm going to fly through this quite quickly because to some extent you're going to overlap with each other. But Anne Claire, I think you said in your slides, correct me if I'm wrong, 80% of people have at least got a higher degree, if not PhD, is that right?
Yeah, so so generally, you know, PhD, masters, but you know, some of the best people I've worked with over the years haven't had a PhD, so I don't think it is an absolute, but you know, it's certainly something that we would look for just to show that dedication, you know, to the science. It's one measure, but your application and everything else you bring to it is going to be really important as well. It isn't just predicated on having a PhD, because, you know, lots of people apply with PhDs. It's the whole package we're looking for, because we're an agency, so it's a relationship-led business. So also your ability to communicate more broadly. And, you know, when it gets to the interview stage, very often when you sit and talk to a number of candidates, they may have different skills and even better, you know, on paper, but when you meet them in the person, you know who's going to make a difference and fit your culture and be great with the client. So that, you know, being an all-rounder does make a big difference.
Okay, and Paul, I'm going to jump to you now, PharmaGenesis. I mean, you have got a lot of PhD postdoc writers, haven't you? But it's not an absolute, is that right?
Yeah, similar to Anne Claire. I think it's probably 80-90% historically, but it isn't a prerequisite. You don't need to have a PhD. We see a lot of people with masters applying now, and again, it's based on the merit of their application, what they're like as an individual, and what other things they have around. PhD is a very defined type of work. We want to hear what they've been doing outside of that as well. That brings different skill sets. Okay,
Katie, I'm going to jump to you next. The Allegro program. How do you just take PhDs into that?
No, any level from kind of 2-1 and above at undergrad that we look for. But yeah, kind of echoing what the guy said about your application and how, you know, you come across in the interview and writing tests is what we look for, really.
Okay, cool. Elena, you said in your presentation, actually, you've got a specific role for graduate types and other roles for people with advanced degrees, is that right?
Yeah, so our scientific database coordinator is specifically aimed at graduates, and gives you a really broad kind of basis for coming in to the industry and moving on from there. You know, there's no doubt that a PhD gives you a certain training in terms of kind of self-motivation, and that is really helpful. But you know, there's a lot of extracurricular activities that people do, for example, essay competitions, etc. And when you're applying, I would encourage you to kind of sell those extra things that you've done. So your cover letter for Helios, for example, is a great place to sell those additional skills.
Excellent. And Matt, I'm coming to you last, because we've had some conversations in the past about PhDs, not PhDs. What's your position on this?
Same, we don't require them. As the others have said, they're a handy checklist for me to show that somebody's got some dedication, they can deep dive into a subject, they can project manage themselves. You can demonstrate those skills in other formats and in other bits of your CV, then you don't need the PhD. Most of the time, that depth of scientific knowledge, just to spin into a slightly different question we often get, my PhD maybe isn't very medical. It doesn't really matter. The chance of your PhD or your, you know, coming through into your actual medcoms career, it's very rare that happens. It's nice when it does, but it doesn't matter. So I think most people don't struggle when they come in because they can't get into the science enough. They struggle because they can't communicate well enough, they can't work in the team, they can't deal with the shifting deadlines and that kind of thing. It's not usually depth of scientific understanding that trips people up. So don't worry if you think, oh no, I haven't got a PhD, I haven't shown I can really hone in on that enzyme. That's not usually what slows people down.
Okay, but those transferable skills are valuable. And just as I comment, and I will make it because I think it's important that people watching this understand, you know, overall, and I did my survey in 2018 of who was taken in, there's no doubt the advanced degrees were very useful in terms of, or most people who came into the business, whatever anybody says, do have advanced degrees into medical writing, and a lot of them do have the PhDs and postdocs. So it's just worth understanding it's a very competitive business to get into, and your postgraduate and certainly PhD type of skills that you pick up can be very useful, but it's on the basis of transferable skills. It's not because, like you're saying, Matt, it's not because you happen to be the world expert in a particular enzyme or something. Which leads into another question, which has come up several times in our questions again. And I'm not going to sit here and start giving numbers and all the rest of it, but people are asking about salary and so on. But just give a little bit of again, context here. So if you are, let's say you have done your PhD, you're into your second postdoc or whatever, you're becoming, you know, you might be earning reasonably good money. What's going to happen when they come to you? Are you going to go, no problem at all, we can pay lots of money? Are you going to go, well, frankly, you have to start at the bottom and work your way up? Maybe not everybody, but a couple of people answering that. Who wants to go first? Before I say what I'm going to say, Katie, I'm going to pick you. If somebody comes to you and says, I'm very experienced, so I want to come as a principal medical writer, what do you say to them?
No, fundamentally, no. There's no real way to bypass the training and the exposure into medcoms that you get. It would be a poor experience from you from a learning, as well as, you know, getting thrown in at the deep end. You'd have lots of expectations. So we'd kind of treat it as it's a new industry, albeit linked or similar to what they might have done in the past. Actually, you've kind of got to work your way up from the ground.
And the salary expectation has to be managed in the same sort of way. You're going to be starting lower down by definition. So you might have to might have to sacrifice something in order to start somewhere. Yeah. Yeah.
And we'd say, you know, as everyone else will in medcoms, there's no set limit to how quick your progression is. So if you are as good as what you say you are, you know, you can accelerate quickly and get back to what you might have been, you know, once you're at medical, senior writer, those kind of levels. You kind of just got to put the groundwork in first. Yeah.
So I think that, and which was the other really important point that I would have come to if you hadn't said that. So, you know, you do have to accept the fact you're coming into a training role. That comes with a load of implications, part of which is salary. However, you're not coming into some sort of banded place. You're not going to have to wait for the person above you to die before you step up. You know, you can put the effort in, you can be good, and you can move quickly through the ranks. Yeah. Again, just a couple of comments, not everybody, but Anne Claire, just to comment from, you know, are we saying the right things, and what would your point of view be on that?
Yeah, and I think it's like anything. When you come in, you know, we all benchmark. I think everybody's aware, you know, very much of that, and You know, you obviously run the surveys in partnership with a recruitment group. So there is, you know, we all look at those. But then I do think it comes to the individual, because if somebody's coming with significantly more life experience or experience that would help in, you know, their ability to, you know, work with clients and relationships, you know, those sorts of things, then obviously we will look at that. But as Katie said, you know, it's an entry level position, and there's investment from the company as well in training and developing. So, you know, there's a fair market value for that role, but it will absolutely, it isn't dead men's shoes. You will progress as quickly as you are able to. The only limit on that will be, you know, your own ability to get up to speed and move things on and demonstrate value for your team, the company, the clients, and then that will dictate how quickly you move on.
Okay, cool. And just to switch a little bit, I'm always very aware, a bit of my brain cell at the back of my head is just saying, you know, we're starting to focus very much on the writing side, and I want to keep this a little bit broader on the account management side and so on. So we started going down this sort of side, but yeah, I mean, I'm going to pick Paul for what it's worth, just kick off. And, you know, on that side of it, you know, the PhD may be arguably less so important, maybe a bit more industry experience might be useful. But again, you're going to bring people in at a sort of a training level. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I guess within PharmaGenesis we have 2 associate roles. So we have a project assistant role and a account executive role, and they're people who come in sometimes not necessarily with the scientific background either. And it's really about how people develop and take advantage of the opportunities that the company provides, as I'm sure everybody else on the line would say, in how they develop. So yeah, it's useful to have a life sciences background, but it's not a prerequisite in those roles. And we do see people switch between the two. I think, who was it on the line? Was it Anne-Claire on the lines? Mentioned that she'd switched, or Diane mentioned that she'd switched between roles. Sorry,
Elena.
I got it wrong. Elena has switched between the roles, and we see that in people as well.
Excellent. Okay. Anybody else want to pitch in with anything on that point, or should we move on a little bit? Yeah. No. Okay. One of the again, I say, well, it's not one of the questions. There's several questions coming in about English as a first language to any of these roles. Can you just talk? Can a couple of you volunteer to talk a little bit to that? If English isn't my first language, is that going to cause me a problem if I'm coming in as a well, it's into MedComms, let's leave it, but specifically to being writing? Who's going to talk about that? Anybody? Happy to? Who am I going to pick? And Claire, there you go.
Just to say that the level of language we would say has to be native English speaker level. So we have quite a few folks who aren't, you know, sort of native English speakers, but the level of their spoken and written English is at that level.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And would you all just basically nod your head then with this? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my answer to anybody. And having said that, I think, sorry if I'm repeating what you said, Anne-Claire, sorry, my mind went off on one. What I say to people is the language skills are very, very useful. This is a global business. So language skills are very, very useful.
Absolutely.
However, the base language is English. The written work is English. So your English, written English has to be really very, very good. And that's not to say it can't be, but you do have to understand that if you're coming in on that basis. Yeah,
and the tests would, you know, I think the cover letter, the you know, the application, the writing tests, that will all be tested throughout that process.
And to ask an obvious question, well, not an obvious question maybe, but several of you got global offices in different parts of the world. You know, it's still very English language driven, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's just nodding at that, which is great. Thank you very much. Always happy for you to disagree with me if I'm saying something stupid. Okay, we've got very comments coming in. You know, how competitive is it to get in? It's probably difficult to give a real feel for it, but it is pretty damn competitive. Anybody want to just talk briefly to that? I mean, it sounds like, well, there can't be that many people wanting to get in, and they're screaming out for people. How difficult can it be to get in? I'm a clever PhD with 40 publications behind me, sort of thing. Can we just get a couple of you just giving a sense of how, you know, if you go out and look for people, are you screaming out for candidates, or have you got plenty to choose from? Go on, Paul. Yeah.
So yeah, we're looking out for candidates. We're a company that's growing, wants to continue the success. So we get a lot of applications, but I think we use the writing test to check the base level of what people can bring, and I'd say only a small proportion of people probably pass that test. So we are looking for candidates. We've got a number of open roles. It's just what we do is based on quality and relationships, and those two things require very high standards. So it's difficult to get in for a reason.
Okay. And just on that point, writing tests, let's not get into a lot of detail here, but everybody would agree if you're going for a writing position, you take a writing test at some point, yeah? Okay. And so can I just, if I say this and you nod at me, if you want to disagree with me or go in a different direction, but what I say about the writing tests is very often, my experience anyway, is that you're not playing games with people. You know, what you've provided with them should tell them what to do. If they read it properly and they answer the question properly, if they really don't understand, they can ask. That may be even part of the thing, because we need to clarify the brief. But essentially, you're not playing games with people. So my example is always, if you're given a paper and told to write 900 words for a nursing newspaper, you know, because you're trying to see whether someone can get the message and communicate to a different audience. You know, don't write 2,500 words for the top opinion leaders just to show you're very clever, sort of thing. Yeah. So answer the brief. That is a big part of doing a writing test. So I'm just going to take it, everyone's nodding at me. If you're not going for a writer, say for the account management side of things, are you using writing tests there? Anybody using writing tests there?
Not writing tests. We have other tests we would do with people on the commercial side coming in, perhaps usually when they've got to the interview, some kind, you know, here's a bunch of different emails you receive, which one are you going to prioritize first? This is a sort of a financial spreadsheet and things. Can you do some totting up and answer some questions about it? So something a bit more related to the project management stuff, but communication, but not specifically technical writing.
Okay. Is it fair to say attention to detail is something that people keep hanging on about in this business? And that applies whether, you know, it doesn't matter if it's not just editors and proofreaders, but the writers certainly, but also the account execs and so on. Attention detail is one of the things that will be, you know, and that's the fastest way I think people fall over, because they don't quite think about that. And the emails come in and it's not written properly, or they've written to the wrong person, or they call you the wrong name, or, you know, or whatever it is attention to detail, which is really very, very important. Again, and nobody's disagreeing with me, yeah?
No.
Okay, which is good. Thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions that are coming in, which seem, I think what they're basically saying is, if I'm coming from abroad and I want to work in the UK, can you help me with visas and so on? Anybody in a position to answer that one, either yay or nay? I mean, go on there, Claire, again.
We don't support visas at the moment, so. Okay,
anybody do support visas? So that's a tough one if you're outside. Okay, having said which, it's a global business, so hopefully there are other opportunities elsewhere in the world, but that's something to understand. Okay, I think we've covered those questions. This is very much focused on the application process. I was hoping to get a bit beyond that, but a couple of questions here about recruiters. So am I going to be disadvantaged if I come through a recruiter? I mean, that's presumably no. If you're employing a recruiter to look for people, they're not disadvantaged, presumably. However, you are interested, you're going to say yes, okay, right, I was trying to avoid that, but you know, you are looking for people directly for lots of good reasons, but you're certainly not you're not averse to people applying directly. Speculative is okay, and so on. Go on. You're all grinning and smiling at that one. So the advice ought to be to come to you directly. Hopefully you're putting clear indications on your websites or on our jobs boards or something that you're looking, but actually speculative is fine. You are all looking all the time.
Yeah, I think it does show that you've done your research on the different agencies that are out there, and just to say, you know, I think we've shown today all the agencies have quite different cultures and things that they offer, so you've got to sort of match yourself with the agency that you're applying to. I think coming directly does show that.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to make the general point, although I'm smiling with you all smiling at me. In fairness to the people who are going through recruit, I mean, there are agencies that do recruit through recruiters, and the recruiter's there for a reason, and that isn't disadvantaging you in that situation. The problem with, you know, generally speaking, most people come into this business by going directly, and generally speaking, the recruiters don't work at an entry level in the first place. But I think if you're currently with a recruiter and they're telling you we can help you, I think we shouldn't just sort of say that's not going to help you, despite a couple of comments coming in now as well as you're smiling. Okay, right. Okay, if we move on a little bit, I actually hadn't said that. We've talked about the training so on. I'd like to make a general point, which I try and make in all these sorts of webinars these days, which is, it's important. MedComms has come a long way in the last few years, and from a training and development point of view, this business has matured a lot, yeah. And several of you talked about training programs, and it's quite a lot of training program, not just on the job training. But I think we should all just pat ourselves on the head a little bit, because 10 years ago it wasn't like this, but in the last few years it's become very like that. I mean, you're coming into a career, you're coming into a business area that is actually prioritizing training and learning and development, whether it's done face-to-face or remotely or whatever else pans out. But again, you're all nodding at me, but for those of you who've been around a little while, or Diane, I know you've developed a whole suite of training stuff. I mean, that is what I'm saying is true. Yeah, the last 2 or 3 years, things have moved along a long way. Yeah.
I think they've just become a bit more structured. I think the training's always been there, but it was perhaps a little bit more ad hoc. But I think as we've got bigger and busier, we've all had to kind of adapt to creating training materials that people can access on demand, and it can be there when they need it rather than having to wait until there's a session being run. So I think the training has always been there, but it just is better structured now, and we can see the gaps a bit better as well if there's something else we can add in there. So yeah.
And then the business has matured, hasn't it? Yeah. So that's sort of brought with it a whole load of this stuff. Okay. Just to throw this at you, I don't think any of you really said very much about it, so maybe there's a good reason for that. But just a couple of oddities. If they join you for all the right reasons, anyone got some quirky sort of benefits packages? There's a lot of emphasis these days on not just the salary and the work they're training with, but the benefits that are around at the moment. Anyone got some quirky ones they can throw out that might make them take notice of you? They're all looking at me like they don't want to answer that question. Go on, throw a quirky one out.
We've got a sort of flexible benefit package of 10% of the salary. It can be kind of divvied up the way you want, really, pension and health insurance, etc. So yeah, it's a little bit flexible.
Okay, anyone doing, I don't know, I mean, having said that, we are running, just as I have at the moment, the third survey we've done on salary and packages and healthcare communications on, and there's quite a range of quirky benefits. I was hoping some of you might come out with a few of them. You're not going to, are you? Drinks on Friday afternoon, free beers, I don't know.
I think that kind of thing happens. I think that kind of thing happens probably all over the place within teams as standard. So I think a lot of us will have structured traditional benefit packages. We have obviously employee, everybody has a share in the business. That's a kind of a differential for us. I think we've looked at what staff want, when they're thinking about sort of benefits, and I think they're starting to see a greater sort of interest in social, the ability to take time to do non-traditional things so that they can spend time outside of the business. So that's been, particularly as we've got younger people coming in, that's absolutely something that's being looked at in terms of evolving packages. It's less about themselves and more about what they can give more broadly.
Okay, cool. Anyone on my final attempt to get someone.
But just in terms of setup from that, I think you've got the usual, salary and bonus and pension and all that kind of stuff. I think what we did was lock into around a year or so ago we called it ways of working, where you looked at this thing of how much are we saying this is the working day and how much are we saying this is the working location, and did a big survey and a big change of people saying, mixing and matching a little bit of these days in the office, these days at home, these days shrunk the core hours so they still met client needs around the world, but then when you've not got to be 9 to 5:30 and moved it a lot. So tried to just be a lot more flexible about the way the working day was set up and structured in a working week. And I think those are the kind of things that people seem to have responded to much more, because it lets them do the social things, it lets them do the family things, rather than, like you say, a free fruit basket every week or something. Which are a bit more quirky, but a bit more long term in terms of the amount you get out of them.
Okay, cool. All right. And I think probably we are reaching the end, and we should sort of start to think about wrapping up. I would like to finish, and I don't want to get into a lot of depth on this one, okay? But there will be people asking themselves, why do I need to go and join a MedComms agency? I'm this clever PhD postdoc with 40 publications behind me. I can do freelance work. Can we just touch on the freelance situation? There clearly is a big freelance community out there. People, and can work all over the world doing freelance work very successfully. But can we just, I'd like to emphasize the fact that it's best to come into an agency, get the training, and then go freelance, if you like, later on. So I've now said what I want you to say. Is anyone going to back me up on this or have a few comments about, the value, not rushing into freelancing too fast? Anyone Anne Claire's nodding, can I go with you then?
Yeah, just to say that I think we use, most agencies will use some element of freelance support to deal with the peaks and troughs of conferences and busy periods. So I would say that when we're looking at freelancers, if that's your long-term goal, we would want to know that you've got a proven record, and the easiest way is showing that you've come from, a good credibility within the agency world. And it's also a very small community. Like, a lot of us would know each other. A lot of people know, and that's a good way. If you've got a good reputation that's been grown up from an agency, then you're stood in good stead. And I think that, in terms of maybe the initial point of why freelance versus agency, I think at the moment what we've seen is, if you're in an agency, you're in a stable environment that is more protected. So a lot of freelancers at the moment are struggling a little bit, just with, I'm sure that'll come back on stream, but I think it's the agency is definitely the best place to start, I would say.
Excellent. Okay.
It also, because it's not just, I think people thinking that often only think about maybe abstracts, posters and publications, because that's where the academic experience of the writing is coming. That's a proportion of MedComms, but it's not everything. So you've got zero experience in doing all the other kinds of writing that we do. And then, as Claire was saying, we don't know. We're still going to need adaptability, communication and teamwork out of you, even if you're a freelancer. It's not just send you something, you send some pages back and you're done. So it's easier to have hopefully assumed that somebody's got those skills if they've had a successful portion of their career in the agency, they've demonstrated those things, or they know people in the industry who can vouch for them.
Excellent. Okay. Look, if nobody wants to add anything specific to that point, and so final question, has anyone, while we're recording, just before we close it, has anyone got anything, are you sitting there going, we should have said this or we should have said that? Or are you reasonably content with what's happened so far? You can shout now or not. Okay, all right. I think it's useful. I mean, I have to say, just listening to you talk, and I hope this is what the audience think. It doesn't really matter what we talk about actually, because what you're talking about and you're talking about the agency that works on. There are differences clearly coming through in the ways that you work and your cultures and all sorts of things. And I think that's really part of the value of this sort of thing. You can look at a website and not really get the difference, whereas just hearing people talk is really very, very, very valuable. So I really think huge thanks to you guys for joining in like that. I suspect we haven't answered all the questions, but why don't we wrap up the recording? We'll have 5 minutes at the end just to sort of maybe pick another couple of questions up before we disappear. But for now, if you're all happy, I'm going to say, I'm going to wrap this up by saying great and thanks everybody. I will say, I'm sure you're all very happy to be contacted via LinkedIn. So please do, anybody reach out and say hi. For those of you who are watching the video, it's one of the series we recorded along with presentations from each of the individual agencies at our Meet the Agencies event in May 2020. So you'll find all those videos and much more at FirstMedCommsJob.com. So please go and check that out. So guys, can I just ask everyone to give us a wave and I'll stop recording. So bye for now. Bye.